Schrodinger wave equations. Schrodinger wave equations describes the wave nature of a particle. Schrodinger wave equation describes the wave nature of a particle in mathematical form. This is the basic wave equations for the motion of the particles. Schrodinger, if the particle associated with a wave, then it should have a wave equation to describe the wave nature. So Schrodinger connected the de Broglie's wavelength with classical differential wave equation. Schrodinger expresses an equation by connecting de Broglie's wavelength with the classical differential wave equation. So he obtained two types of wave equations. One is time independent wave equation and the other one is time dependent wave equation. First, let us discuss about the Schrodinger time independent wave equation. Schrodinger time independent wave equation. So in this equation, first write classical differential equation is classical differential wave equation is given by classical differential wave equation is given by dou square psi by dou t square is equal to v square dou square psi by dou x square plus dou square psi by dou y square plus dou square psi by dou z square. This is a classical differential wave equation. Here in this equation, psi is a wave function or the displacement of a wave at any time. Psi is the wave function. Here v is the wave velocity and this is here dou square by dou x square plus dou square by dou y square plus dou square by dou z square is the operator. So this operator del square is a Laplacian operator. This is del square is equal to dou square by dou x square plus dou square by dou y square plus dou square by dou z square. This is an operator known as Laplacian operator. Laplacian operator. This operator del square operates on this function dou square psi by dou t square is equal to v square del square psi. When del square is equal to dou square by dou x square plus dou square by dou y square plus dou square by dou z square, this is the operator operates on a wave function psi, then it becomes dou square psi is equal to dou square psi by del square psi is equal to dou square psi by dou x square plus dou square psi by dou y square plus dou square psi by dou z square. So this is equation 1. This is equation 1 and the solution of this equation is assumed to be psi is equal to the solution of equation 1 is equal to psi is equal to is in the form of psi naught sin omega t. Here omega is the angular frequency. Omega is equal to 2 pi nu. So psi naught sin 2 pi nu into t. Sin 2 pi nu into t. This is the equation number 2. Now differentiating equation 2, twice differentiating equation 2 twice. If we differentiate equation 2 one time, it becomes dou psi by dou t, differentiating with respect to time. So dou psi by dou t is equal to dou psi by dou t is equal to psi naught. Differentiation of sine is cos. So cos 2 pi nu into t with respect to differentiating with respect to t, so that again 2 pi nu. This is we are differentiating psi, the wave function, with respect to time t. Now again we differentiate this dou square psi by dou t square is equal to dou square psi by dou t square is equal to, so here dou by dou t of dou psi by dou t, that means dou square psi by dou t square. Here psi naught, differentiation of cos is minus sine, kabatti minus sine 2 pi nu into t, again 2 pi nu. So 2 pi nu into 2 pi nu, 2 pi nu whole square. So dou square psi by dou t square is equal to dou square psi by dou t square is equal to here 2 pi nu whole square, that means 4 pi square nu square. This is equal to minus 4 pi square nu square. Again psi naught sin omega t is nothing but equation 2 sine. So psi naught sin omega t is psi. Okay, here dou square psi by dou t square is equal to minus 4 pi square nu square psi. Here nu is the frequency of the stationary waves. So nu is equal to v by lambda. Substitute minus 4 pi square nu is equal to v by lambda. So v square by lambda square into psi. Since nu frequency is equal to v by lambda. Okay. Now this is equation number 3. Compare equation 1, dou square psi by dou t square is equal to v square del square psi, and equation 3, dou square psi by dou t square is equal to minus 4 pi square v square psi by lambda square. From equations 1 and 3, from 1 and 3, v square del square psi is equal to this one, minus 4 pi square v square by lambda square into psi. Here v square gets cancelled on both sides. Then del square psi is equal to minus 4 pi square by lambda square into psi. From this, del square psi plus 4 pi square by lambda square into psi. This equation minus, when it moves from to the left side, minus becomes plus. So this is equal to 0. Del square psi plus 4 pi square by lambda square psi is equal to 0. You know de Broglie's wavelength lambda. What is the formula? De Broglie's wavelength. De Broglie wavelength lambda is equal to, we know that lambda is equal to h by mv. Lambda is equal to h by mv. Here in this equation, lambda square. So lambda square is equal to h square by m square v square. Lambda square is equal to h square by m square v square. So substitute this in the place of lambda, then the equation 4 becomes del square psi plus 4 pi square by lambda square, that means h square into by m square v square psi. This is equal to 0. Then if E is the total energy, that means total energy sum of the potential and kinetic energies, and V is the potential energy. If V is potential energy, then kinetic energy of mv square can be written as of mv square is equal to kinetic energy is equal to total energy minus potential energy. Total energy minus potential energy. This is equal to kinetic energy. From this, m square v square is equal to 2m of E minus V. 2m of E minus V. Let us suppose this is equation number 5. Equation number 5. M square V square is equal to 2m of E minus V. Here look at the equation number, this is 5 and let it be 6. So here in this equation, m square v square is equal to 2m of E minus V. In the place of m square v square, substitute 2m of E minus V. From equations 5 and 6, look at equation 5. Del square psi plus 4 pi square m square v square by h square into psi is equal to 0. In this equation, m square v square is equal to 2m of E minus V. So substitute 2m of E minus V in the place of m square v square. From equations 5 and 6, from equations 5 and 6, del square psi plus 4 pi square by h square to m of E minus V into psi is equal to 0. Here 4 into 2, 8. So del square psi plus 8 pi square m by h square into E minus V of psi is equal to 0. This is Schrodinger time independent wave equation. This is Schrodinger time independent wave equation. Now, you know that h cut is equal to, this is h cut or h cross is equal to h by 2 pi. Here in this equation, h square by 4 pi square. If you square on both sides, h cross square is equal to h square by 4 pi square. Substitute h cross square in this equation. So equation 7 becomes del square psi del square psi plus 2m by h cut square, 2m by h cut square, 4 pi square by h square means 1 by h cut square. So 2m by h cut square to e minus v of psi is equal to 0. Okay, this is also Schrodinger time independent wave equation. Again, this can be written in the form of operator form. How can we write? Now multiply h cut square by 2m and divide this equation number 8. So when we multiply equation 8 by h cut square by 2m, then the equation becomes h cut square by 2m del square psi plus here 2m by h cut square into h cut square by 2m cancelled, e into psi minus v to psi is equal to 0. This is equal to minus h cut square by 2m minus h cut square by 2m del square psi plus v psi is equal to e psi. Multiply this equation with minus, then minus h cut square by 2m into del square psi, plus into minus becomes minus e psi, minus into minus plus v psi. Here minus e psi, when we move it from to the right side, then it becomes plus e psi. So minus h cut square by 2m del square psi plus v psi is equal to e psi. So in these two terms psi is common. So write minus h cut square by 2m minus h cut square by 2m into del square plus v into psi is equal to e psi. So this equation is in the form of h psi is equal to e psi. Here h cap is the operator, Hamiltonian operator. H cap is equal to, this is h cap minus h cut square by 2m into del square plus v is the h cap Hamiltonian operator. E is the energy. E is the energy. E is energy. Okay, so this is a Schrodinger time independent wave equation. First, classical differential wave equation, and then the solution psi is equal to psi naught sin omega t. Again the solution is differentiated twice. After that we get dou square psi by dou t square is equal to this minus 4 pi square v square by lambda square psi. From equations 1 and 3, v square del square psi is equal to minus 4 pi square v square by lambda square into psi. So then the equation becomes like this. After that, this is Schrodinger time independent wave equation. Schrodinger time independent wave equation. Okay, Schrodinger time independent wave equation. Now Schrodinger time independent wave equation. Now time dependent wave equation. Schrodinger time dependent wave equation. You know, classical differential wave equation is dou square psi by dou t square is equal to v square del square psi. Here del square is Laplacian operator. Del square is Laplacian operator. The solution of equation 1 is in the form of psi is equal to psi naught e power minus I omega t. Here psi is the complex function having space coordinates x comma y comma z and also time t. So this is a time dependent wave equation. The solution is assumed to be psi is equal to psi naught e power minus I omega t. This is the equation number 2. Differentiating equation 2 with respect to time. Then we get dou psi by dou t is equal to psi naught e power minus I omega t into minus I omega. Here minus I omega is the angular frequency which is equal to 2 pi nu. Minus I 2 pi nu to psi naught e power minus I omega t is nothing but psi. So substitute psi. Here nu is equal to, you know that E is equal to h nu. So nu is equal to E by h. From Planck's quantum theory, E is equal to h nu. Nu is equal to E by h. Substitute in place of I into 2 pi to E by h into psi. Okay. Here h by 2 pi is h cross. So that 2 pi by h is 1 by h cross minus I into E by h cross into psi. Dou psi by dou t is equal to minus I by h cross into E psi. From this equation, E psi is equal to, E into psi is equal to minus I by h cross, move left side, then minus h cross by I into dou psi by dou t. Here in this equation, multiply I and divide with I. Multiply and divide by I. Minus I into h cross by I square. I square is equal to minus 1. Dou psi by dou t. By substituting I square is a complex function, I square imaginary, I square is equal to minus 1, you know. Since I square is equal to minus 1, minus by minus, minus gets cancelled, is equal to IH cut into dou psi by dou t. Here E psi is equal to IH cut dou psi by dou t. You know Schroedinger time independent wave equation. Schroedinger time independent wave equation. Independent wave equation. What is that? Del square psi plus 2m by h cut square into E minus V into psi is equal to 0. In the place of E, substitute IH cut. In the place of E, substitute IH cut dou psi by dou t. 2m by h cut square into E psi minus V psi is equal to 0. Okay. So this equation becomes del square psi plus 2m by h cut square, 2m by h cut square into IH cut dou psi by dou t minus 2m by h cut square into V psi is equal to 0. Okay, A into B minus C is equal to AB minus AC. So write in this form. Now del square psi multiply this whole equation with minus h cut square by 2m. Then minus h cut square by 2m into del square psi plus into minus becomes minus 2m by h cut square into I h cut dou psi by dou t. Minus into minus becomes plus 2m by h cut square into psi is equal to I h cut dou psi by dou t. Okay. This is a Hamiltonian operator h cap into psi, and I h cut into dou by dou t is the energy operator E cap into psi. This is Schrödinger time dependent wave equation, and from the Schrödinger time dependent wave equation we write h cap psi is the Hamiltonian operator, which is equal to minus h cut square by 2m into del square plus v, and energy operator E cap is equal to I h cross dou by dou t. So this is an operator. Cap represents an operator. So energy operator I h cut dou by dou t, Hamiltonian operator minus h cross square by 2m into del square plus v. Schrödinger time dependent wave equation can obtain by eliminating E psi, del square psi plus del square psi plus 2m by h cut square into E psi is I h cut dou by dou t minus v psi is equal to 0. Del square psi is equal to minus 2m by h cut square of I h cut dou psi by dou t minus v psi. From this, del square minus 2m by h cut square by 2m into del square plus del square psi plus v psi is equal to E psi is the Schrödinger time dependent wave equation. So psi is the wave function in space coordinates x, y, z and time t. Thank you.